Everybody wants to see the train, baby.
Clear your mind. When I reviewed Condemned: Criminal Origins, I talked about how much hype surrounded the launch of the Xbox 360 back in 2005. It's not hyperbole, the anticipation was white hot, and this is back when generational console upgrades really meant something. Condemned, Oblivion, and Graw looked amazing for their day, but obviously you can't ride that hype out forever, and most launch games were pretty bleh otherwise. Halo 3 was being discussed, and yeah, cool, it's coming eventually, but they were just words at that point. The 360 really needed a heavy hitter, a game that screamed, "You need this console." Now, the year prior to the 360's launch, a tech demo was presented at E3 2004 that demonstrated the next generation potential of the Unreal Engine 3, and this was really exciting, especially for the next generation of consoles. The first trailer for Gears of War was a big deal, man. You have to remember, this was before video sharing was as instantaneous as it is now. You really did tune into E3 back then to see the biggest news in gaming, so when this early trailer debuted, it was special. But okay, the trailer was good, but when we saw the game in action, everyone knew that Gears of War was not only a striking demonstration of this next-gen tech, but it was poised to be the killer app for the upcoming Xbox 360. I couldn't find footage of it, but I very clearly remember watching the live X-Play coverage on TV. Cliffy B was playing the game and someone told him to wrap it up, but Cliff said something like, "Oh wait, before we go," and then he showed off the chainsaw lancer execution. They cut back to Adam Sessler's face and he was beaming like a glowworm, something like this. And his face was exactly all of our faces watching from home. Man, I miss when that dude hadn't completely lost his mind yet. So, after months of waiting and hanging on every article and every 144p video, November of 2006 came. I remember sitting next to my brother as he was casually scrolling on Xbox Live when we saw someone on his friends list playing Gears. He just said, "It's out." So, enough preamble. Did Gears of War come out swinging? Did it sell a ton of copies and push the Xbox 360 into millions of homes around the world? Yeah, dude. Why else would I write this long-winded intro? The story of the first Gears was modest compared to where it would eventually go, with experiments on kids and spousal deaths and all of that stuff. Oh, and by the way, we're just talking about the story in this game, not the books or the comic books. I'm focusing on what was given to us in-game. And what's here isn't terribly deep, to say the least, but wait, that's something I've always liked about it. The books, novels, and comic books expand on the story in a tremendous way. I've had a great time reading the expanded lore online, and it's awesome for fans that want more, and I could certainly never advocate enough for reading. But I like that things in the game are simple. I like that there isn't a 40-minute cutscene dumping a tomb of lore on you, and I say that as someone who's watched every cutscene in Metal Gear 4 an unhealthy amount of times. The basic premise is that 14 years prior, the Locust, an angry, violent race of aliens, emerged from inside of the planet, Sera, and attacked. Emergence Day, or E-Day. And ever since, humanity has been fighting for its survival. You play as Marcus Phoenix, a disgraced former COG soldier, a Gear, who was convicted of failing to obey commands in order to rescue his father, Adam Phoenix. This alleged abandonment led to the deaths of several Gears, and Marcus was sent to Jacinto Maximum Security Prison, the Slab. His initial sentence of death by firing squad was stayed, and instead he was ordered to serve 40 years. Due to the worsening situation topside, Dominic Santiago, a gear that served alongside and grew up with Marcus, is sent to break him out of prison to get back on the front lines. The expanded story between Dom and Marcus in the literature is very interesting, and eventually Dom would become a more prominent, tragic character in the games, but in the first Gears, he's good, but not terribly fleshed out. The cutscenes in Gears are great. Just big, loud, dumb action cliches all over the place. There are times when the characters will have quiet conversations, but the action is never far away. Outside of the cutscenes, information is often relayed over radio. This is okay, I guess, and I like listening to Anya and Marcus devise a plan, or Baird being a snarky ass, but the walk and talk sections really slow the game down on subsequent playthroughs, which is why future games let you skip them. But on a first run, it is entertaining to listen to the chatter, and what made Gears of War so much fun from a story perspective is the characters. Aside from Lieutenant Kim and Anya, everybody in Delta Squad are walking, talking, gruff macho men cliches. Massive, burly dudes with huge arms, kilos of body armor, and big egos. But they all have unique personalities, and the charm from each just pours through the screen. Marcus is my favorite, and the design is just perfect. The big sloping forehead, the scowl, the soul patch, the scars. But I fucking love the Cole train, Augustus Cole. I love listening to Dom and Marcus banter about Cole's background as number 83 on the Cougars, a pre-war football team.
Number 83. Damn.
The one and only, baby.
Remember this guy? He played for the Cougars, defensive lineman. We saw you play.
That's right. Everybody wants to see the train, baby.
It's a bit of silly wisecracking, but I've always enjoyed how little conversations like this give us a peek into pre-war Sarah. It's something I hope we get to see a whole lot more of in the upcoming prequel, E-Day. Also, I hope you're having a nice day. Could you like this video for me? It really helps. Thank you.
Who loves you, baby?
Yeah, group hug.
Anyway, the Cole train has the loud, funny dialogue, but I will always defend the fourth main gear, Damon Baird. Baird is the mechanic, the fix-it man, the brains, but they don't depict him as the usual shaky nerd that eventually has a moment that hardens him, makes him one of the guys. From game 1, Baird doesn't care about being one of the guys. He's an acerbic smartmouth, and he doesn't hesitate to have a moan about the team's current predicament. But he's not just a mouthpiece, he also fixes everything, and it really is thanks to Baird that the characters are able to progress in the story. Lieutenant Kim is an underrated character in my opinion. He's the ranking officer on the ground with Delta Squad. I like that he's well-spoken and professional and keeps his enlisted apes on a leash when all they want to do is go kill. But he's on the ground. He's fighting Locust right next to you, and he keeps his cool during battle. And he's not just a stern officer stereotype. You can tell the boys respect his lead. And unfortunately, just as it gets going, we get introduced to the big bad antagonist of the game, General Rom. And upon his introduction, Rom just slaughters Lieutenant Kim, breaking his neck before impaling him on a gigantic sword. It's a badass villain intro and really makes Rom look menacing and capable. And if you listen carefully afterwards, Marcus seems to be holding back the pain of reporting Kim's death to Anya. This is a credit to John DiMaggio's performance as Marcus. The only major issue I have in this story is that Rom has this big bad intro, and it's made quite clear that this is the guy, Super Shredder over here. But then Rom just kind of disappears until the final chapter. It would have been so cool to see how he was preparing to conquer Delta Squad. Maybe some communication with the Queen, preparing a coffee, anything. But nope, it's not until the very final fight that we see the general. But if you listen closely, he tells the Krill to serve the Queen. Wait, Queen? Queen of what? Yeah. She smugly proclaims that this is merely a temporary setback, and of course, it's in that snide British tone that all bad guys are known for. You heard her speak earlier when Rom was folding Kim's clothes while Kim was wearing them. Again, this character, Queen Myra, much like Dom, gets expanded on eventually, and that's great and all, we'll get to those. But in Gears 1, I remember getting to this cutscene and saying, "That's it?" Rom goes down like a chump, Hoffman offers Marcus a hand to bury the hatchet, and some random, evil British lady talks some shit. The end. But you know something? In this instance, the lack of depth and payoff with the villains didn't really bother me all that much. Let me simplify my thoughts. I enjoy the story in Gears of War because I just love watching the boys of Delta Squad do hood shit. Marcus is a strong leader, Dom is a loyal soldier, but an even more loyal friend to his boy. Cole and Baird are the perfect odd couple, and Anya is the voice in our ear to keep us focused on where we're at in the mission. But there's just nothing like the dudes getting up to no good, throwing grenades and talking trash, lighting up grubs with shotguns and dropping the hammer of dawn, trying to save the world but doing it with style. At the time, some of the elevated critics gave games like this and Army of Two grief for the manly, gruff, quote, frat boy talk with silly antics and frequent curse words. Granted, several of these critics probably had the complexion and physique of melting dinner table candles, but my point is that it's something I actually really miss in action games, the silly meathead stuff. And hey, I'm a geek too, but that's the point. I'm not a 6'6" muscle man with a chainsaw machine gun, as far as you know. I love playing as a dude that has vocal cords made out of sandpaper and 24-inch arms and a do-rag. Why not? You know, it's still okay to have fun with fiction sometimes. The Gears kind of remind me of CJ and the Grove Street Gang. Just a bunch of dudes who came up in troubled circumstances in life, but they lean on each other to get through the hard times. And that's ultimately what the story in Gears of War 1 is about to me. Onwards, we have to discuss how the graphics of this game quite seriously changed the course of the Xbox 360 forever. I mentioned how cutting edge the graphics were in the early trailers and gameplay demos. Dude, look, I know I say this all the time, but it would be impossible for me to explain just how incredible this was at the time if you weren't around for it. It must have been like when your grandparents saw color TV for the first time, or when they bought their first
Slave.
I just remember everyone in school talking about Gears, specifically about how good everything looked. In particular, I remember the Mad World trailer. To this day, it's probably the best video game trailer I've ever watched. And I remember I was working at a restaurant at the time and there was a TV above the bar. When they showed the Mad World trailer, even the salty old dog sitting at the bar looked up and watched it. Everyone did. Tim Sweeney's original Unreal Engine was revolutionary for computer graphics at the time. Especially for 1998, Unreal was a game unlike anything you would have seen before it. And artistically speaking, this is still one of my favorite looking games from that era, right alongside Thief and Half-Life. Unreal Engine 2 powered some of my favorite games from their day, like Pandora Tomorrow and Rainbow Six 3. And if you can believe it, BioShock, the great and powerful BioShock, was brought to life by a heavily modified Unreal Engine 2. So, Unreal Engine 3 was expected to push the envelope, and you simply couldn't have asked for a more perfect showcase for the new engine than Gears of War. But as the cycle of life goes, things age and beauty fades. What keeps a game timeless is the art direction, character designs, and world building. Gears of War has all three. We already discussed the human character designs and how memorable and fun they are, all big and bulky like action figures. The same can be said for the Locust. I love how they have various armor configurations and weapon loadouts, all indicating rank and status within their army. They look cool, but they're also a blast to fight due to being humanoid in size and movement. Well, except for the big monstrous creatures, but I'll discuss those later. The decimated remnants of the planet Sera is by far my favorite part of this game's design. The art direction in Gears is superior and will outlast any aging technical features. When Epic was promoting Gears, they used the term destroyed beauty often. And you know, they really came through with that. Seeing this once prosperous and thriving society after 14 years of constant warfare is stunning. The architecture in particular is grand and lavish. If you're even remotely interested in world building in the art of video games, some of these structures will have you stopping to stare in awe quite a few times. The Phoenix Estate, the Conservatory, and on. But several of the interiors are also incredibly detailed and majestic, even the grungy industrial ones like the Emulsion Factory. The metallic shapes that press out at you, squeezing you in, the scattered debris and signs of life. This section does a great job at something that Gears of War did that kind of flies under the radar in discussion, which is the horror elements. You know, it's hard to feel afraid when you're a hulking action figure dude with a massive arsenal on your person, but the rumbling of wretches and big bumps behind the walls do keep you on edge, especially on higher difficulties when death comes quickly. And there's something about that old Unreal Engine 3 charm. I can't quite put my finger on it or in it. Games like Gears and Arkham Asylum use the engine to maximum effect, and the cold blues plus washed out greens are absolute gaming comfort food to me. Some people have moaned about the washed out color palette over the years, and the Ultimate Edition of Gears of War beefed up the saturation quite a bit. And we'll talk Ultimate Edition in just a few, but for my money, I prefer the original dreary hues. I love color in gaming, as you may know, but the desolate, dying world themes and tragic elements of the story are amplified by the drab tones. Also, look at this rain. Look at how gorgeous this effect is, even 20 years later. You can practically feel the heavy dollops of water just pissing down from the sky, and it adds a layer of moodiness that would have been absent if it was just a dry, spooky night. And being able to stand under a running stream of water and watch it bounce off of you may seem quaint now, but in 2006, this was really something else. Oh, and hey, another cool thing to mention, if you play the original game on a Series console or on a One XS console, you'll get an FPS boost, making the game run as smooth as butter. The original game usually maintained a healthy 30 FPS, which was remarkable given the demands this game placed on the console, but obviously you can't beat an increased frame rate. And Gears of War quite literally changed the course of the Xbox 360. I remember reading somewhere that Tim Sweeney was the guy that petitioned Microsoft to increase the Xbox 360's RAM to 512 megabytes instead of the originally planned 256. I've also heard it could have been Cliffy B, but who knows. This change apparently cost Microsoft $1 billion, and if that's true, then holy shit did Tim Sweeney save that console. 512 megabytes of unified RAM instead of the two different memory pools of 256 that the PS3 had was a major advantage, and it's why many cross-platform PS3 games would tend to run a little more poorly on that console. That extra RAM was also why you could listen to custom music over your games and have cross-game party chat. In the days before Discord, 360 party chat was amazing. Seriously. And when Xbox Live exploded during the 360's run, you can bet that Microsoft made that cash back. And this big money decision was made specifically to get Gears of War running optimally. One game. This one game quite literally defined what one of the most successful consoles in history would become. They wanted the gamers to have a better experience, and they were rewarded. Can you imagine a time when Microsoft cared about making amazing games instead of just swallowing every company into its multi-billion-dollar butthole with teeth? Remember the Meat Cube demo? Epic wanted to show off what it was like when the player shot, battered, or maimed the meaty bits of each enemy. The brutality in Gears of War is still as savage as ever. Enemies shake and splatter when rounds are ripping into them, heads pop off like a cherry, very clearly inspired by Resident Evil 4, and throwing grenades at 2 or 3 locusts at a time while you wait for the shower of chunks to fly is still as satisfying as it could be. The animations across the board are phenomenal. Hitting cover feels heavy and bulky, and swapping from surface to surface is as smooth as silk. The roadie run, named after a concert roadie picking up a downed microphone stand, is still one of the coolest effects I've ever seen in a video game. I cannot emphasize enough just how good it feels to sprint around the map, simply because of this shift in camera angles. Anyhow, this is one of the finest achievements in gaming visuals history. It changed the course of a console that would go on to sell tens of millions of units. But more importantly, the Xbox 360 ushered in a much more streamlined online gaming ecosystem with the revamped Xbox Live, and a big chunk of people were playing Gears of War on that service for a long time. So the graphics in Gears of War were all the rage at the time, so much so that it was easy to overlook the sound design. And of course the graphics were amazing, but this is a shame because the audio design in Gears of War is glorious.
This is great. This is the bee's knees, item 9.
The word that comes to mind here is harmony. The sound design, combined with expert-level audio engineering, makes for one big, beautiful, audio-leveled layer cake. The gunfire never drowns out the dialogue, the whooshing of the grenade chain is heavy and thick, the thunderous chugging of automatic weapons fire, and the dramatic grumbling of an emergence hole opening up in the battlefield. It's just perfect. But it's not simply big gunfire and explosions. The audio is also expertly implemented to cue the player and to increase immersion. The all clear sound effect when you've wiped out all of the grubs is so satisfying, and it gives me a Pavlovian response to sigh with relief and start collecting ammo for the next fight. Speaking of ammo, the little click 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 when your magazine is about to run dry is a genius piece of sound design.
Motherfucker!
Some of the sound effects are simply iconic to anyone who's played Gears. You know this one. Sound gets smartly weaved into other aspects of gameplay, like the fight against the Berserker. She's big and mean, but she's blind. She listens for you, so you need to make a racket to lure her into smashing through walls for you. Just make sure to roll. Then, at times, if you stop and listen, the ambient audio in the environment is rich and enhances the atmosphere of each level. The rain outside of the emulsion factory is thick and constant. It enriches the level so much. Equally as important is the intense cinematic score. Composed by Kevin Ripple, the soundtrack comes right out of an epic sci-fi blockbuster. Now, there aren't any songs that you're going to be humming to yourself a la Marty O'Donnell's work, but the second I booted the game, the subtle hopelessness of the menu music brought me right back. Everything was familiar in the best way. The soundtrack behind the action is full of bombastic cello stingers, big brass arrangements, and the bite of marching snares, and I swear I heard the Lancer's gunfire being sampled. Again, I wouldn't say any individual song is a hit single, but the music in Gears of War does what all good video game music should do. It enhances the game itself. It acts as another pillar. And in this case, Ripple's work is masterful and prominent. Job well done. The last thing to talk about is the voice acting, and you just can't go wrong with John DiMaggio.
Looks to me like you need all the help you can get.
If the name doesn't ring a bell, it should. Jake from Adventure Time, Waka from Final Fantasy X, Bender from Futurama, and for my money, his baritone portrayal of the Joker in Under the Red Hood is superior to the usual high-pitched imitators. Again, the dialogue here is 98% meathead tough talk, but I love the character of Marcus Phoenix, man. During conversation or when giving commands, he's stoic and grim, but during battle, this animal comes out, and DiMaggio's grizzly bear voice fits these moments perfectly. Every other actor brings their character to life, and in a rare occurrence, every voice fits their respective character, especially Lester Spate as Augustus Cole, the Cole Train. At one time, Lester was, for real, almost as big as Cole.
Yeah, almost.
So, is Gears of War all flash and no substance? No, the gameplay was just as revolutionary as the graphics and sound. Before Gears, the only real cover-based third-person games specifically were Winback and Killswitch. Winback is a classic that really deserves a lot more credit. It's a little rough around the edges nowadays, but try it out on an emulator and give it some time. You might be surprised at how much you'll enjoy it. Killswitch, unfortunately, kind of flew under the radar when it came out. It took the cover concept from Winback and evolved it. When Gears was being promoted, Killswitch was specifically cited as an inspiration for the cover gameplay. And with respect to Killswitch, Gears took that concept and cranked everything way, way up. Even if you weren't there for it, if you've played any really great third-person shooter over the last 20 years, you can pretty much thank Gears of War and Resident Evil 4 for all of that. And if you were there, you probably remember exactly how fucking awesome it was at the time. Hitting cover was as satisfying as the combat. The weight of these big guys combined with their armor smashing into a wall or a concrete barricade felt punchy and aggressive. And the roadie run, that goddamn roadie run, it's how the camera pans down and makes you feel like you're in this funnel, trying to dodge bullets and just make it to safe cover. It's absolutely perfect. Even to this day, it's just so much fun to pull off. Because A is the cover button and the sprint button at the same time, it can get a little frustrating getting stuck to cover when you're trying to retreat or change positions, I gotta be honest. But it's not common, and in general, you shouldn't have to retreat if you're winning. Combat arenas are all crafted with multiple cover points as well as flanking routes, and the game actively encourages you early on to swing around and crush your enemies from every angle. It keeps the game engaging and requires a modicum of strategy outside of simply marching head first at all times. But the Locust have their own tricks too. Emergence holes are where the monsters burrow out of the ground and attack. You close them with grenades, and let me tell you, the grenades in Gears of War are some of my favorite in gaming history. Spiky bombs attached to a big heavy chain with a gorgeous blue arc for aiming. But the spikes aren't simply for aesthetics. Sticking a bomb onto your enemy before rolling away to let them erupt into a shower of chunks is brutal and ultra satisfying. Speaking of satisfying, the chainsaw attached to your Lancer rifle. It's as iconic as it is impractical, and I love all of it. A chainsaw on your gun. What else do you need? It took a basic concept of the bayonet and added a motor, and everyone loved it. Landing one of these in multiplayer was the ultimate. The arsenal in Gears is a character in and of itself. The Lancer and grenades are my longtime go-to, but even the basic MX-8 snub pistol is fun to use, loud and great in close quarters. The Boltok pistol is a hand cannon that does big boy damage, especially up close. Nothing like a handheld howitzer. If you really want the meat shower, use the Boom Shot grenade launcher. Crushing big enemies with a few well-placed lobs is fantastic, and the whistle right before impact is music to my ears. The Locust rifle, the Hammerburst, doesn't have a cool gimmick like a chainsaw, but it does massive damage, and even on hardcore, finishes most enemies with a few volleys. The Torque Bow, simple, except that each arrowhead has an explosive tip. Sinking a perfect shot and waiting for the boom is always satisfying. On hardcore or insane difficulty, you can get one-shotted by the bow, and seeing a Theron guard draw an arrow against you adds a ton of tension in battle. The sniper in Gears is tremendous, one of the best in gaming history in my opinion. Landing a perfectly timed active reload and getting that beefed up silver bullet is a power trip, made even better when you pop a Locust coconut and hear that chunky active reloading. This is an ingenious gameplay feature. I can't emphasize that enough. This is brilliant. Tap the right bumper to reload. Do nothing else, and the reload goes through as normal. But tap it again inside of the gray bar, and you'll get a faster reload, which is crucial on harder difficulties when enemies are rushing your position. If you hit the right bumper inside of the tiny sliver of the white box, however, you'll get a fast reload and a damage buff to your current magazine. And if you screw up, your weapon jams and you get a slow reload. Having a completely optional, silky smooth minigame weaved naturally inside of the main gameplay loop with its own set of rewards and consequences is, again, ingenious. Phenomenal game design. Bounding cover to cover, firing, flanking, firing some more, and ripping a crisp, smooth active reload is gaming bliss, really. Speaking of bliss, let's do the shameless plug. If you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing to my Patreon page, patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. You got this video days ago. You also get all of my music, including the intro song that you heard for this review. You'll also get exclusive Patreon-only gameplay videos that will not be on any other platform ever. And that's no shit. Patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. Go check it out. So I love playing Gears of War alone. Aside from a few dumb moments, your AI companions often hold their own. They'll use cover, flank, and lay down suppressive fire. But, like wanking, this is better with a friend. I recently streamed a bit of co-op with Mrs. Tension. I was reminded just how good two-player Gears is. After the Tomb of the Unknowns, the sun goes down and the Krill come out. It's definitely a pitch black ripoff conceptually, but the sequence through the stranded town is excellent. The krill die in the light, but will rip you to pieces in darkness. So as you move through town, you'll need to find and detonate propane and propane accessories to make light for safe travel. The spotlight segment is simple, but keeping your buddy safe in the light as they trek across town is charming, and it requires communication. Playing Gears online is awesome, and having your own full screen is obviously nice, but these kinds of things are really what make couch co-op games unbeatable. Sitting next to someone you love, fighting side by side, calling them a dumbass, etc., it can't be matched. Well, except for the driving segment. Look, if there's one big glaring stain on Gears of War, it's this dumb driving segment. Marcus and Dom need to get to the other side of town. The car has a UV light turret to fight krill. You can't drive and shoot at the same time, as the car doesn't have enough power for both. You have to stop to blast the light. It's not complicated, but the problem is, there was always a krill that kept battering the very center of our vehicle, and it couldn't be hit with the light. It took us several tries, but we eventually worked out our plan. Drive like hell down the highways, don't stop, and blast the swarm on the turns. And you know something? Even though this segment stinks, and it does, working together and developing a successful strategy was super rewarding, and if that doesn't define co-op gaming, I don't know what to tell you. And if you've never played Gears, don't let this little bit of whinging put you off. To this day, this is one of the best co-op games you and a friend could play. And don't tell her this, but Mrs. Hypertension is my favorite gaming buddy. She also uses the chainsaw noise to hide her flatulence. Like I don't know. But she didn't have time to stay for the whole game, so back into the fray I went. Here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Wait. Then there are the times when the game will have you split off from your team. It's pretty basic, choose left or right, but you'll see another angle on the fight. Gears will funnel you towards the same rendezvous either way, but the variety and the bits of choice are refreshing, and it always feels good watching your team battling near you as you slowly converge and then catch the grubs inside of your crossfire. Crossfire! On the subject of team, when Marcus gets a field promotion to sergeant, you can issue commands to your squad. Attack, regroup, etc. It's okay. Honestly, 99% of the time I forgot it existed, but I suppose it was fun to pretend to be Ding Chavez like old times. Real ones remember. There are a few boss fights in the game. Not many, but they are memorable. The Berserker fight, like I said, is excellent. It's a cool spectacle, but it also helps to pace the game as well. What I mean is, up until this fight, you and your boys are merchants of death. Big muscles, big attitudes, big dick, guns. But in the span of 2 minutes, Lieutenant Kim is thoroughly destroyed by Rom, and now you're being hunted by a gigantic, nearly indestructible blind monster that can hear you and smell you. Going from a killing machine to prey is a great shift in tone, not to mention it's just cool to see the Berserker run through walls. Using sound to lure her is clever, but hitting her with the fire from the sky via the Hammer of Dawn is absolutely incredible and so satisfying after being hunted for the last several minutes. The Corpser is an awesome confrontation, and the design is excellent. The massive insect-like body, huge armored crab legs, and the big face of a dinosaur. I don't care for the wretches sprinkled in, but that's because I hate fighting wretches. Otherwise, this is a great battle, and the ending makes Marcus Phoenix look like a badass. It's basically Kratos staring down the Minotaur, but it's still awesome. The same, unfortunately, can't be said for the final boss, Rom. He looks like a proper endgame villain. Large, cool-looking coat, real menacing, but really he's just a big dumb bullet sponge with krill for armor. Dom is absolutely useless in this fight, and babysitting him is needlessly corny. On Insane, This fight is a pain in the pecker. Oh well, you know the drill. Stay in the light, torque bow for the krill, long shot for Rom, nades if he's close, whatever. There is one more fight, but that didn't come around until sometime later. In 2015, Gears of War got a fancy pants remaster on Windows and Xbox One. Initially, I was just going to review the original game and call it good, but then I remembered that the Ultimate Edition included the entirely new chapter from the PC release of Gears that centers around the new boss, the Brumok. Brumok had been teased in screenshots for the original Xbox 360 release, and you do see the beast in the game, but the fight was cut out. The chapter was included in the remaster in the very last act, so for the review, I played through the entirety of the Ultimate Edition, because I like when my subs get throbs in their knobs. Let's go through it. First off, Ultimate is much more bright and colorful. Now you may prefer this, and that's fine. I prefer the gritty, hopeless tone of the original 10 times out of 10, but that doesn't mean the Ultimate Edition isn't stunning, because it is. Even 10 years later, orange light from a falling sun baking the crumbling world around you is gorgeous. Areas like the conservatory and college look amazing. Your taste for either version will dictate which you prefer, and I can't say the game doesn't look great. But there are times when the Ultimate Edition is almost objectively worse. Unfortunately, the rain effects in the Emulsion Factory are underwhelming. The lighting is gorgeous, and nothing beats a good strike of lightning in the night sky. But the rain is more of a light drizzle in place of the monsoon-like downpour of the original. Also, several of the cutscenes in the Ultimate Edition were altered. I guess because Borderlands was big, they tried to make Jack, the robot that just cuts through doors, more of a cute character here. Oh, they had him acting sad when Marcus says this door is too thick for Jack to cut through. Like, he's a robot. Anyway, this is a minor nitpick. A more noticeable change was the factory interior, which starts out looking about the same as the original until... What's this? What's this? What's this? There's no blood anywhere. Okay, so there is some gore, but look at this original clip. Brutal, man. Bodies, human vitality, organs strewn all over the place. It's grisly. Now look at the Ultimate Edition. It's toned down quite a bit. Now, I'm not an edgelord. I'm not a fanatic for gaming violence. I'm really not. But when you're trying to establish a certain tone in any visual-based medium, the stronger the imagery, the more effective that tone tends to be. So it just kind of stinks that the Ultimate Edition scaled this back a bit. Be that as it may, it's not sacrilege or anything. At least they kept the scene. Alright, let's move on from comparisons and talk about the new stuff, specifically the Brumok chapters. This was the big single-player edition, originally seen in the PC port of Gears. It's alright. The gameplay is standard Gears fare. Emergence holes, wretches, the usual. Visually, this is gorgeous stuff. I really like the shantytown and the waterside restaurants. The Brumok stalking you and your squad throughout the chapters is pretty cool, and seeing this hulking beast charging at you down Main Street is quite a spectacle. Everything culminates in the final showdown between Marcus, Dom, and the big bad Brumok. Triple B. Shout out. It's also alright. Boss fights in the game were limited, so to have another large, nasty beast to slay is definitely appreciated. The Brumok stomps around this big yard. You have to destroy his arm cannons and then take out the grub that drives this dinosaur around.
So long, Bowser.
I've read the opinion that these chapters slow the pace of the game down, but I don't know. I didn't find them too long or intrusive, and this whole section is naturally weaved into the Lightmass plot instead of being plopped in arbitrarily. I didn't feel encumbered by it, and if you like the fundamental gameplay in Gears, you'll enjoy this well enough. The final fight against Rom is functionally the same, but at the very end, they show the Locust Queen, Myra, as she delivers her big speech about blah blah British villain shit, you know. Hey, look at you. I mean, Gears 2 and 3 had long since been a thing at this point, so obscuring her humanity wasn't a big deal. However, I can't leave without saying one last thing about the Ultimate Edition. The friendly AI in the base game, as we mentioned earlier, has its share of silly moments, but I swear, the team AI in the Ultimate Edition is worse. I played these games back to back, and something just seemed off. I played the first 2 acts on Insane, and my squad was utterly useless. I've played the original game on Insane before, and yes, it was difficult, but it wasn't constantly babysitting my team as they went down over and over again. And it's not the difficulty. All the footage you're watching now was captured on casual difficulty. My troops would do dumb, often suicidal maneuvers in the heat of battle on a regular basis. Thankfully, they can take more damage on casual, and they don't bleed out like your mates in Kane and Lynch, and thank goodness, I don't think I could have finished this otherwise. I haven't been able to locate any concrete proof about the AI being worse, but if there was a song you've enjoyed many times over the years and it was suddenly in a different key, you'd notice. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, long story going on way too long, the Ultimate Edition still looks gorgeous even 10 years later. It runs smoothly and it adds a fair bulk of single-player content. The version you choose to play is personal preference. I will always prefer the more washed out, grungy look of the original, and like I said, if you play on an Xbox One or a Series console, you'll get an FPS boost, which makes everything so much better. Or you could always wait for Gears of War to come to the PlayStation, a sentence I never thought I'd say. Gears of War Reloaded is coming out this year, followed by a prequel to the first game known as E-Day, and they're coming to the PlayStation. I remember talk of a playable build of Gears of War 3 running on a PlayStation 3, but that never came to fruition, and it likely was never meant to. But now, Gears of War on PlayStation is a reality, and it's surreal. And if you're a longtime Gears player, cross-platform multiplayer is gonna be like a great white finding chum. Anyway, this is footage of me searching for a multiplayer game in Gears of War. I patiently searched for about 10 minutes, and I was about to pull the plug until, here we go. Oh man. I have no idea what type of connection everyone else was using, but the way I was lag teleporting around at times, let's just say the bits per second would be impressive at a Zimbabwe gas station in the late 90s. Alright, so maybe most of my deaths were a skill issue. Guilty. But I did get a chainsaw kill and a frag tag. So, S-M-D. Alright, I'm talking nonsense. Putting aside my pitiful score, that old rush came back, albeit in a bittersweet kind of way. Don't get me wrong, it was a great time. But then I realized it's been nearly 20 years since I first played Gears of War. 2 decades. I planned on talking about the various multiplayer modes and all of that stuff, but you know, when I was playing, that stuff didn't even occur to me, quite frankly. I just thought of friends that have long since passed, or the ones I lost contact with many years ago. I was in a fraternity when I was 18. No, they did not try to touch my b-hole. A few of us were hardcore gamers, and we had many nights of getting smashed and playing Gears online. That ratty old frat house on Normal Street was alive with the sounds of meatheads shouting into those old gray and white microphones that came with the 360. I just thought back on all of that. I just wanted to record some footage, but I ended up tapping a strange mental time capsule. Despite sucking ass, Gears of War multiplayer is still a great time, and I can't wait to see the servers of Reloaded populated. Getting called slurs by strange people online, just like the good old days. I won't belabor the point. Gears of War was a massive success. The Xbox 360 version has a 94 on Metacritic, and it sold 1 million copies in its first 2 weeks and nearly 6 million copies after 2 years. It was the reason to own an Xbox 360 for a long time, and this is the legacy of Gears, a franchise that came from nowhere and completely took over. Not only did the game sell millions and garner high praise, it single-handedly changed the course of the Xbox 360 and thus Microsoft's gaming division as a whole. The costly gamble to increase the console's memory paid off in spades. Sony's PlayStation 3 ended up being a massive success with a library of phenomenal games and console features that were way ahead of their time. However, the average gamer of the day wasn't interested in what a console could eventually do. They saw Gears of War doing what it did then and there and said, yeah, I'd like a bit of that. Gears of War sold the Xbox 360. And yes, Halo 3 eventually came out and dominated Xbox Live, and it was a massive success for Microsoft, and that's all well and good. But in my opinion, Gears of War is the best exclusive franchise that console ever produced. And if it was just this game, it would have been an amazing legacy by itself. But then the second Gears came out in 2008 and took things to a much higher level. Until then,